Several years ago, I noticed this area of woods had mostly red maples, and it was so open there was very little of any cover or food for wildlife. And I went into the worst part in 2016, 5 years ago, and I did a bunch of cutting. So here you can see this was actually getting into a little bit of the better parts. There's about half the trees you're looking at here are scarlet oaks, and the other half are red maples. But in this section behind me here, this was almost all red maples in this hollow. So here you can see the stumps. All those stumps are red maples that I cut, and I left a few quality trees standing here. You see a couple of, right there's a scarlet oak, and cut all the rest. Anyway, in 5 years' time, this has turned into a jungle in here, and there's very heavy deer trails going around the perimeter of it. It's almost too thick in there. The deer are bedding into the edges, but anyway, the big deal here is the stump sprouts. So right here, the red maple is sprouting out in stump sprouts. The main stump of it's cut a little high, and so that died, and it sprouted out the side of the stump here. And you can see everywhere the deer are browsing, they're heading for these stump sprouts rather than browsing the little trees that are coming up. So here you have sunlight and you have little oaks coming up, and the deer don't even bother. Normally these little oaks would be browsed, and that would be what the deer would be eating. But these little oak trees have a big chance here because the deer are really zeroing in on the stump sprouts, and here they're eating greenbriers. Greenbriers heavily browsed. So turn a bit of a desert in the woods. What this was a absolute desert. There was nothing growing here that was good for anything for wildlife habitat. And I have turned this with just an hour and a half's work with a chainsaw. I have turned about an acre here. Now it's probably a little under an acre. It probably cut maybe 3 hours, but in a couple hours time I have created more deer food than I could have ever created planting a field in that amount of time. And this type of deer food just lasts for years and years. And actually it's amazing when I look at the trees, the few quality trees that I left standing. There's a cherry tree, and the speed of these trees, there's a big oak right there. The speed of the trees growing, the growth rate of these trees that I have left standing has doubled and tripled. And they're way bigger than the comparable timber stand size out around where the trees are overcrowded. So again, amazing how much deer food can be created with just a chainsaw and a couple hours time if you have the right elements in the woods. Here's a beautiful white oak tree that is just, it is growing at a lot faster rate than it was before I gave it some sunlight. Plus it has put all these branches out to the side because the sun's getting in here. So anyway, it's just an amazing jungle here, and the deer are just living in here. If you look at the browse and the growth here, the deer are just loving it between the stump sprouts and the greenbriers. Here is a tree that is very heavily browsed. Just a lot of deer browsing and deer trails all over the place in here.